General David Petraeus is a retired U.S. Army general and former CIA director. So they say the strait's open. A day later, they light up two ships. Who's calling the shots in Iran?
Well, there's clearly some friction between those who are doing that. The foreign minister was the one who announced that it would be open. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps leaders announced that it would be closed. So you have captured it correctly that there is, again, some internal disagreement. I'm not sure it's quite as big as has been made out to be. But I think the base case is that Vice President Vance and the negotiators will fly tomorrow to Islamabad. They will meet there with the Iranian negotiator, who had quite a large team with him last time. He's the Speaker of their House, Gallup. And we'll see if there is trade space. The key issues that have to be resolved, obviously, restoration of freedom of navigation through the Gulf as well as through the Strait, because Iran was interfering within the Gulf as well. Obviously, the issue of can they enrich uranium again? How long until they can, if that is bargained over? What about the residual, the 60% enriched uranium, over 1,000 pounds of that, again, buried deeply in some mountain or underneath the rubble at Esfahan? And then also the issue of their frozen reserves, which they'd love to get access to. They do have some reserves at home, still reportedly about $35 billion, and they have somewhere around 180 million barrels of oil floating around out in the Asia Pacific that could be a source of revenue for them as well. So they're not at the point of desperation, but 80, 90% of their economy depends on what goes into and out of their ports. And that is not allowed right now because we rightly have put a blockade on their blockade, saying if you aren't going to open it, it's not going to be open for you. And that is going to be what's going to have to be resolved here. So a number of key issues. I think both sides, frankly, really do want an agreement. Obviously, there are challenges domestically for us if this continues. Obviously, there are huge challenges for them economically and financially if it continues. And I don't think that either side really wants to return to full-on combat, knowing what that could represent. And keeping in mind that, yes, our military men and women have done magnificently in achieving the objectives set out for them, but there has been damage to infrastructure in the Gulf states, and we certainly don't want to see more of that. When I was in Doha several weeks ago, they told me that 17% of their LNG capacity is offline for the next 3 to 5 years until they can repair it. So a lot of dynamics here, Jesse, that will come to play and determine whether there is a deal going forward, perhaps an interim deal that allows the extension of the ceasefire further and maybe even further.
You basically said both sides want a deal. General Keane suggested a decapitation strike of the people negotiating or some of the military leaders if they don't get one by Wednesday. Do you think that's necessary? Well,
that kind of threat is probably just going to push them further underground. Again, this is a culture that accepts martyrdom. Keep in mind that that is what we are dealing with here. Again, they're not looking for it and welcoming it. But assassinating a few more leaders is not going to bring this issue to a close, I don't think.
Do you think bridge and power plant, I'm thinking the New Jersey commute, bridge and power plant, is that something that they require a taste of before finally buckling? Because you look over the weekend, they're still clipping merchant ships.
I think we have given them a taste of that already, very, very substantially, Jesse. We have taken out every manufacturing facility for components of their missiles and the facility in which they put it all together. So again, they've seen lots and lots of damage that we can inflict. And we have gone after some of that, which does, in fact, it literally fuel or energize the Revolutionary Guards Corps and the other elements of the regime forces. So they know what we can do. And again, that does matter to them. They don't want that, but they're also trying to figure out how much can they give on these other issues that traditionally have been very, very difficult to negotiate.
Well, how do you give and keep uranium? The president seems dead set on either seizing it militarily or negotiating 100% of an extraction. Do you think it's worth putting American lives at risk to go in under fire and take it?
Well, I think there are other ways of doing this. Again, the International Atomic Energy Agency, if we get a good deal, we trust them. They have had intrusive verification in the past. You're absolutely right that they lied to us and to the inspectors, but we have had very good, as it's called, insights into what they're doing in their nuclear program over the years. Keep in mind that the Israelis stole the entire library, if you will, of all of their research right out of downtown Tehran. And we got that and presented that as evidence to the world showing that they had been lying. But if you get sufficiently intrusive inspection, if the IAEA can be on the ground and oversee the recovery, because again, we're not really sure where these canisters are of this 1,000 pounds of 60% enriched uranium, which rightly was noted is one turn of the enrichment process below that of weapons grade. But they're going to have to excavate very, very substantially. And by the way, that's what makes the idea of a forced ground operation very, very challenging. My shipmate who was talking about that there knows very, very well. He's a former special mission unit operator. We served together in Afghanistan as general officers, admiral. And again, this would be a very, very tall order. It would be exceedingly risky, and the casualties could potentially be quite substantial.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't come to that. China got caught red-handed, General. I mean, chemicals they used to produce ballistic missiles, they tried to run through the blockade with that. Do you think the president should tolerate that?
Well, no, and he didn't, of course. Our forces didn't. Their rules of engagement are very clear. We have made it very clear to the Iranians and to other countries that nothing is going to go into an Iranian port and nothing is going to be permitted to come out of an Iranian port through the Strait. So that was a good call, and it struck me as very, very highly professional, carefully rehearsed, and well executed.
All right. Well, listening to you, it sounds like you're a little bit more optimistic about things, and this thing is winding down to the proper conclusion. And I hope you're right. And we'll see what happens over the next 48 hours, General.
It will take some time. It's not going to be resolved this week.
I'm sure it will. Thank you again. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.